Hello and welcome to welcome to week 6 in our psychology seminar. Time to get off that couch and get back to work. Nah, I'm kidding. I know you've been all working very hard, even though we had the week off from this class. We're re-engaging, and I want to tell you the next part of this class is there's a lot of pieces. There's 6 different things to do, but it's spread out over 3 weeks. So the next 3 weeks we're going to be talking about assessment in the degree program of the Associates of Science in Psychology. So let's go over to Brightspace, and we're in the timeline here, and here was our week off in week 5. In week 6, 7, and 8, you look, this is assessment part 1, assessment part 2, assessment part 3. And what we're going to be going over is essentially when you come to a college and you're getting this degree in psychology, and kind of like, well, what are you going to learn? For the most part, I've defined and written almost the entire curriculum for this entire program. And so you're sort of, so I've designed the program around the things that I'm comfortable teaching, and a lot of you are going to get the Mark Kavanaugh version along with, whatever instructor you get. But we do have some external standards that I'm using to make sure that you're walking away with all the things that you would need in order to be to have that certificate that you're going to have. You're going to have that degree, and you've learned about psychology, but what does that mean? And in my professional work, I do a lot of work around assessment. That's sort of one of my things. And there are numerous standards to which this program has aligned itself in order to make sure you get the most out of it. And this is really drawing your attention to the detail that was put into almost every single assignment in every single class, and what it's supposed to give you. What are you supposed to get out of this? What kind of learning are you supposed to happen? And so we're going to take a look at this in the content, and I'm going to kind of quickly go over all of it and then kind of focus on what we're doing this week. Was really looking at the first 2 standards that we're comparing to. You can just see right here, we're looking at APA guidelines, value outcomes, 21st century skills, and non-academic skills. Grit is one of those. And so we see that those, you can already kind of get a feel for what the standards are. But if we look into our assessment chapter right here, so we have here that you're bringing things to the class, you're bringing things from your experience, and where are we going to take off from there? So a lot of what we're talking about in terms of non-academic skills and 21st century skills, these are things that you're already building, and then we're going to be adding to that. So the first set of guidelines that we have are those guidelines that were put out by the American Psychological Association, the guidelines for the undergraduate psychology major. Now, this is actually a document, a rather extensive document, going into all kinds of detail about how to do this. But essentially, I've taken I designed the classes and designed all the assignments, and then after the fact, actually went through and said, where does this fit? Where does this assignment fit in the larger scheme of what the American Psychological Association wants you to know about particular areas? And there's 5 areas that they want to focus on. That is a knowledge base in psychology, obviously, scientific inquiry and critical thinking, ethical and social responsibility in a diverse world, communication and professional development. This is what the American Psychological Association wants people to graduate with a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I try to do as much of it as I can in the first 2 years at least. And of course, the expectation is you would build on this with job experience and other educational experiences. Many of you are going on to another school, and of course you'll continue along these lines. So I provide for you a guide as to how I do that in each one of the course books that I've written, and so we'll take a look at those. The next guidelines that I use have to do, this is long-standing, I've been using the Association of American Colleges and Universities value rubrics. Now, the value stands for Value Assessment of Learning in Undergraduate Education. So that acronym has to do with, we have in our minds, let's think of it this way, we have in our minds that if you go to school and you get a degree, you're educated. And in our mission statement for the college, we have this fundamental goal of producing the educated person in a broad manner. But how do we operationalize this? And as a psychologist, certainly when we're looking at testing anything, or how am I going to know? How am I going to know what's an educated person? What do you need to know to be called an educated person? What does that entail? All of those questions regarding what does that actually mean, and where does it happen? As you're taking all these classes, where are you learning these things that make you educated? And so I adopted the Association of American Colleges and University value outcomes. They come in the form of value rubrics, which in their original format, what they're designed to do is to evaluate a student's portfolio. The sorts of a single rubric that someone can use to go through and evaluate all the classes that you've taken, and is there sufficient evidence in each one of these areas. In anticipation of a potential use like that, what I've done is I've taken assignments within the courses and I've aligned them to the different outcomes of the value outcomes. And what I mean by align them, and I'll say, this assignment contributes to your learning in this particular outcome. And again, the guide to that in each one of the course books is present actually in the course book, and we're going to look at that in just a second. But there's a lot of these. There's a lot of these value outcomes: civic engagement, critical thinking. That should be creative thinking. Actually, I got it. Ethical reasoning, global learning, information and literacy, all of these all the way down. And then we add another one, interpersonal communication. Now the next skill is 21st century skills. And you see, it's the third time we see critical thinking. So obviously there's some overlap here, but in here we're looking at what are you getting out of it? Where are you now, and what are you getting out of this program to develop your critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, communication, information, media, and technology, and life skills such as being flexible, being a leader, having initiative, being productive, and your social skills. And finally, in terms of non-academic skills, looking at your character, your social and emotional skills, your growth mindset, non-cognitive traits and habits, kind of refers to the ones above, grit, and your soft skills. So we're taking a look, now this is an ongoing process, but we're taking a look at all of this. I want my students to come out fundamentally transformed by this experience. I don't take this lightly. I want you to be more creative than you were, more that your social skills are developed. Even though you may have a shy personality, you can put it on and make it happen, that you can present well, that you have a good knowledge base in psychology, that you know how to apply psychology to your life. All of these things that are embedded in all of these outcomes. So when I'm designing the curriculum for a given class, I'm keeping in mind all of these things, and how can I create academic experiences for you to have that. Now, so at this point, the evaluation of the APA outcomes and the value outcomes are the ones that are most aligned with specific assignments. The others are a little bit more reflective, a little bit more, how do you feel about that now? And then let's revisit that later on in terms of doing much more of a self-assessment. But as I said, this is still an ongoing creation. So what I want to do is, let's take a look at a course book And for the sake of this particular week, we want to look at the APA and value outcomes. So what you're seeing now, this is actually at the beginning section of my developmental psychology course book. And so in each one of the course books, there's a section called Outcomes Alignment. And what this refers to is I take each one of the learning outcomes, the 5 from APA, and the subcategories of those. There's several subcategories under each one of those. And I take the value outcomes, and I tell you the assignments that are in that course book that address those particular outcomes. So let's take a look to see how this looks. This is in any one of the course books out in my department. So we look here, the first one we're going to look is alignment with the guidelines for the American Psychological Association. That link right there will actually bring you to that document on the web. Let's take a look at that. It actually brings you to these guidelines. Okay? And you see this is a huge document. Okay? About all the guidelines, and we're not even in the guidelines yet. This is just an introduction. So, kind of a big document about all of those outcomes. And as we go into here, we're brought to, okay, you have this knowledge base in psychology, and then there's a subcategory here, there's a subcategory here, and a subcategory here. We'll just look at those. So describe key concepts, principles, and overarching themes in psychology. And in red are the individual assignments, quizzes, and discussions that relate to that. And of course, there's one assignment can relate to many of these, so there's a repeat. It's not that each assignment is only related to one outcome. It's that there's a number of them. It could be a number of them. So, so I'm looking for one example in here, but well, just looking at these, you can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things that I'm having you do that I believe relate to meeting and helping you to achieve this learning outcome, which is describe key concepts, principles, and overarching themes in psychology. Now that's just in this one class. Every class has a whole set of these. Develop a working knowledge of psychology's content domains, and here we have 3 specific ones in there. Describe applications of psychology, and then we go into the next overarching learning outcome here, scientific inquiry and critical thinking. And this goes all the way through, all until we're at the end of professional development here. And that brings us to the end. This is a description of all the assignments in this course book that relate to each one of the learning outcomes associated with the American Psychological Association's expectations for undergraduate degrees in psychology. Now the next one, the next set of outcomes, is the value rubrics, or the value outcomes from the Association of American Colleges and Universities, or AAC&U, which is a lot easier to say. So we go into this next section, and here we are in there, and you'll see there's no civic engagement a part of this particular class. There's 2 creative thinking assignments. There's 4 things associated with critical thinking. There is assignments for ethical reasoning, global learning, not anything for information literacy, lots of inquiry and analysis, integrative learning, cultural knowledge, lifelong learning, oral communication, problem solving, nothing for quantitative, nothing for reading, teamwork, all kinds of written communication. That'd be almost all of the assignments. The assignments usually end up there, and interpersonal communication. And then we go into, the rest of the book, and here we're going to be going into right now the special assignments of the first chapter that comes up. So what I want you to come away with is there's a lot of thought that's gone into the development of the course books themselves that I'm using in my department as a way of organizing the material in the class. So for this first area, let's go to Brightspace here. So we're in this first link for assessment, and then you can see underneath assessment over here, there's APA guidelines, value outcomes, 21st century skills, and non-academic skills. So APA guidelines and value outcomes, that's what you're focusing on this week. So if you click on APA guidelines, this goes into a little bit more detail about how they, here's an example from different. What I want you to do is to examine, in this discussion, I want you to examine any course books that you have access to. If you're taking Intro to Psych, even if you're taking Intro to Soc, that's one. Any one of the psych classes in my department all have these course books, and they all have that alignment that's going on. They have those pages at the beginning. And just kind of look at what you've been doing so far in the class. If you look at the quizzes and assignments and discussions that you've been doing, and then look them up in those areas of the APA outcomes, and of course you'll be doing the same thing with the value outcomes, and kind of see if you can get the connection between what you did and how it leads toward a deeper and richer understanding of that particular outcome. So that's what the discussion is about, to present some of those, and possibly even to critique and say, like, I don't see the connection, or what is that about? And it could be that either I have to explain the connection, or it might not be connected. This was, I'm not foolproof. I did this all, and so it's to make those connections. Sometimes I might have misunderstood even my own reasoning. And so getting feedback on that is usually a really good opportunity for me to go and make some corrections in things. Now, similar to the activity that we have here in relating the APA guidelines, we can also look at the value outcomes, and it's essentially the same thing. And where we see some of these, not only in regular assignments, but we see a good deal of the value outcomes coming out in what I call special assignments. Those are larger assignments like research papers and biographies and experiments and stuff like that I've speckled through the program. Those I'm actually, as I enter into this another round of revising them, those are going to be the focus of some revision coming into next year, and with the work I'm doing with those, and having a better alignment with those, and kind of those are going to become a little bit more central to the assessment process in this program. So there might be some additional ones with maybe some pulling back of some of the other many assignments as you're encountering. If you're taking any one of these classes, there's a gazillion little assignments, and right now we're sort of in the process of assessing the assessment. We not only want to have a good, clear notion of how we determine that you are educated, and how, kind of giving you the opportunity to see, oh, this is why I'm doing this, it's connected to these larger goals. I'm also looking at, and the institution is looking at, am I assessing the right things? As a psychologist, these are basically experiments. I give you something and then I measure the outcomes of that. I give you an education and I measure the outcomes, but is my measure good? Is my assessment good? And we're kind of in the process of evaluating all of these assessments to make sure that they actually do measure what we want you to be learning. And so that's the thought process that's behind all of these things. So for this week, there's a lot in this area of assessment, but we're only going to be focusing on APA and value rubrics for this week. And then next week, we're going to go into 21st century skills and have some fun with that. So enjoy this. You're kind of looking, if you don't have access to a course book, if you're only taking this class and you don't have another course book, send me a message, because I can send you a link to one. I'll send, whichever one you want. You can look up the catalog. I can send you forensic psych. I can send you developmental, intro, sociology, abnormal. I can send you any one of those. I'll send you a link to the course book, and you can use that for the purpose of your assignments. If you are taking a class, I'd rather you use that one, because you're actively using that course book, and be interesting to see how you can see the connection between the work that you've already done and even looking ahead, the coursework that you will be doing in that class and how it connects to the larger goals of the entire academic program. So look forward to seeing some of your comments on these, and have a great week.